$2 million, dead or alive. We almost wiped every single one from the face of the earth. Let's find out how close we came. A researcher floats alone in open water. No cage, no platform, just sea and sky. Below her, the water drops into blue depth for nearly 2 miles. She has been waiting for minutes, listening to her own breath when the water changes. Not a splash, not a shadow, more like a pressure shift, the kind your body registers before your mind can explain it. Then a humpback rises out of the blue, 40 tons of animal moving so quietly that its arrival feels impossible. It slows beneath her, close enough that she can see barnacles on the jaw, pale scars across the skin, and the huge white pectoral fin hanging in the water like a wing. Then it releases a bubble ring. A near-perfect circle of air spins upward toward the surface. Then another. Then another. In 2025, researchers documented humpback whales producing large bubble rings during calm interactions with humans. The behavior appears deliberate, but its function is still uncertain. It may be play, it may be curiosity, it may be some form of signaling. What matters is that it does not fit neatly into the old story of whales as simple, instinct-driven giants. That is where the real documentary begins, because the closer science looks at humpback whales, the stranger they become. They sing evolving songs, they learn from one another, they coordinate during hunts, they travel thousands of kilometers with astonishing accuracy. And in some of the most surprising observations ever recorded, they sometimes intervene when killer whales attack other animals. An adult humpback whale can reach about 16 meters in length and weigh up to roughly 40 tons. That is the mass of several elephants, but in water it moves with extraordinary agility. Humpbacks can roll sharply, bank hard, and launch most of their bodies clear of the sea in explosive breaches. Their long pectoral fins are among the longest in the whale world, reaching up to a third of the body length. Those fins are why the scientific name Megaptera means big-winged. Along the leading edge sit rounded bumps called tubercles. Research suggests these structures help the flippers maintain lift and maneuverability, giving humpbacks better control during tight turns and feeding lunges. When a humpback breaches, the impact can carry over great distances. Scientists have proposed several reasons for breaching: display, communication, play, parasite removal, even social signaling. But there is no single universal explanation. The behavior appears flexible, and that flexibility itself is part of the story. Inside the skull is another mystery. Humpback whales have large, highly folded brains, which tells us they process vast amounts of sensory and social information. Researchers have also identified spindle-shaped neurons in several whales and dolphins, similar to the von Economo neurons seen in humans, great apes, and elephants. A humpback may live 80 to 90 years. Females usually produce a single calf after roughly a year of gestation, and that calf arrives already weighing hundreds of kilograms. Survival depends not just on strength, but on learning migration routes, timing, feeding grounds, and the dangers of a crowded modern ocean. Male humpback whales are famous for singing, especially on breeding grounds. These are not random sounds. They are layered performances built from units, phrases, and themes repeated in long sequences that can continue for hours. Low-frequency sound travels extremely well underwater. Under the right conditions, whale song can move across vast stretches of ocean, far beyond the range of vision. In a dark, three-dimensional world, sound is a way of reaching beyond the horizon. across the South Pacific, scientists have documented these song changes, spreading from one population to another over thousands of kilometers in what researchers have described as cultural transmission on an extraordinary scale. In some years, entire song patterns have been replaced in what scientists call cultural revolutions. That matters because culture changes how we think about intelligence. Culture is shared. It spreads socially. A 2025 science study even found that humpback whale song shows language-like statistical structure, but it means their songs are patterned in ways that are more organized than simple repetition, adding another clue that these performances carry information in ways we are only beginning to analyze. Humpbacks do not feed like sharks. They are not built for sprinting down single prey. Much of what they eat, krill, herring, anchovy, sand lance, survives by moving as a crowd. To catch a crowd, a whale has to manipulate the crowd. That is where bubble net feeding comes in. One or more whales dive below a school of fish and release rising streams of bubbles while circling upward. The bubbles help compress the school into a tighter column. Then the whales surge up through the middle with their mouths open, engulfing water and prey in a single strike. Scientist describes group-coordinated bubble net feeding as a specialized technique in which air bubble curtains condense prey before the whales lunge upward. Recent work in British Columbia and Alaska suggests that both cooperative and solo forms of bubble net feeding can spread socially through whale communities. In other words, some humpbacks appear to learn the technique from other humpbacks rather than discovering it alone. That is a very different picture from an animal acting on fixed programming. And there is one more twist. Humpbacks are not just large enough to make bubble nets. Their bodies seem especially suited to it. Their long flippers and unusual maneuverability may be one reason this spectacular feeding strategy belongs above all to humpbacks. In 2009, marine biologist Robert Pittman witnessed one of the strangest predator interactions in the ocean. Killer whales were attacking a Weddell seal in Antarctic waters. Then two humpback whales arrived. At one point, one humpback positioned itself beneath the seal. The seal ended up briefly on the whale's body, out of the orca's immediate reach. Eventually, the attackers gave up, and the seal survived. Pittman and colleagues later reviewed 115 documented interactions between humpbacks and killer whales. In many of those cases, the killer whales were targeting other species entirely, including seals, sea lions, and even other whales. Scientists are cautious here, and they should be. The evidence does not prove a moral intention. A strong alternative explanation is that humpbacks are intensely primed to respond to killer whales because mammal-eating orcas can target humpback calves. Another is that the whales react broadly to the sounds and turmoil of an attack. But even after we strip away the most romantic interpretation, the behavior remains extraordinary. Again and again, humpbacks have entered violent situations that did not obviously involve them. They are not passive observers of their ecosystem. They are active participants in it. Every year, humpback whales make some of the longest migrations of any mammal on Earth. Many populations move between cold feeding grounds and warm breeding grounds, separated by thousands of kilometers of open ocean. North Pacific humpbacks commonly move between Alaska and Hawaii. Southern Hemisphere whales travel from Antarctic feeding grounds to breeding areas around places such as Tonga, Eastern Australia, Brazil, and the coasts of Africa. And yet, these migrations are not random drifts. Humpbacks often show strong site fidelity, returning to the same feeding areas and wintering regions year after year. In some populations, migration knowledge is thought to be passed maternally, from mother to calf, like a living map. How they navigate is still unresolved. Researchers suspect a combination of cues: Earth's magnetic field, currents, water temperature, underwater soundscapes, topography, celestial cues, and memory. No single explanation has solved it completely. What makes this even more remarkable is that the routes now cut through shipping lanes, fishing zones, and a warming ocean. The whales are traveling ancient paths through a world that is changing faster than evolution can rewrite it. For centuries, people saw whales as takers, giant mouths consuming ocean life. Modern ecology revealed something far more interesting. Whales also give back. When great whales feed at depth and release nutrient-rich waste near the surface, they move iron, nitrogen, and other nutrients into the sunlit upper ocean, where phytoplankton can use them. This recycling effect is often called the whale pump. Phytoplankton sit at the base of marine food webs and generate a huge share of the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. So, when whales help fertilize surface waters, they are not performing a side role. They are helping sustain the productivity of the sea. An IMF-backed analysis argued that the ecological services of a great whale, including carbon storage, nutrient recycling, and support for ocean productivity, give a living whale a value measured in the millions of dollars. The point was not to reduce whales to money. It was to show how wrong we had been to value them only when dead. Even death continues the cycle. A whale fall can feed deep-sea communities for years or even decades, creating islands of life on the seafloor. In life and in death, a whale redistributes energy through the ocean. Industrial whaling turned humpbacks from living animals into inventory: oil, baleen, meat, profit. In the southern hemisphere alone, roughly 200,000 humpback whales were killed between 1904 and 1972, and modern reviews place the broader total near 220,000 when all regional catches are compiled. Some of the worst losses were hidden by illegal Soviet catches that were deliberately underreported for decades. By the mid-20th century, many humpback populations had crashed. Protections arrived in stages during the 1960s, but by then the damage was immense. Scientists estimate the global population may have fallen to around 5,000 animals. That means there was a moment in modern history when songs accumulated over countless generations, migration knowledge carried by mothers, and local feeding traditions built over decades all stood close to disappearing at once. We nearly destroyed a culture before we had even admitted that culture might exist there. Humpback whales are one of the clearest conservation recoveries of the modern era. The species is listed globally as least concern by the IUCN, and many populations rebounded strongly after commercial whaling ended. But recovery is not the same as security. Some regional populations remain at risk, and recent research shows how vulnerable even recovering whales can be to rapid environmental change. A 2024 population study found that North Pacific humpbacks, after decades of increase, appear to have declined sharply following the 2014 to 2016 marine heatwave known as the blob. In Hawaii, abundance by 2021 was estimated to be roughly 1/3 lower than its 2013 peak. The likely cause was not hunting, but prey collapse cascading upward through the food web. Elsewhere, entanglement in fishing gear, ship strikes, chronic ocean noise, harassment, and climate-driven shifts in prey continue to pressure whale populations. Along the US Atlantic coast, NOAA has tracked an ongoing unusual mortality event for humpbacks since 2016. So the story is no longer simply, "We saved the whale." The story now is whether we can keep the conditions of recovery intact in an ocean transformed by human industry. Back in the water, the researcher still hangs above the whale. The rings are gone. The animal remains. Is it curious? Possibly. Is it communicating? Possibly. Is it doing something that our current categories do not capture well? Also possible. The strongest answer science can give is the most humble one. We do not yet know. What we do know is already enough to change how we see this species. Humpback whales sing structured songs that spread socially and change over time. They use cooperative hunting methods that can be learned. They navigate immense migrations with remarkable fidelity. They help fertilize the oceans. And they sometimes insert themselves into violent predator encounters in ways that still defy easy explanation. That is not the profile of a simple animal. It is the outline of a socially complex, behaviorally flexible, ecologically powerful mind moving through a world most humans will never truly experience. The whale drifts below the researcher in the blue silence of its own element. For a moment, two intelligent mammals meet at the edge of understanding. One has studied the ocean for a few centuries. The other has been shaping it for millions of years.